All right, episode 238. Today, we're going to talk about the top 5 keys to winning in a shifting market. We're going to get started right now.
Maybe more.
All right, welcome back. Episode 238. That's 238 if you don't know how to put it all together. We're going to talk about the top 5 keys to winning in a shifting market. And we're going to be dusting off this book right here, The Shift Book by Gary Keller. If you read it, it's actually, man, it hits spot on with what we're experiencing in today's market.
Mark has taken a big shift.
Well, you and I were talking about this
massive
morning. It's like if you just take all of the print marketing advice he has and take it over to digital marketing, it's totally updated. Right? Like that's all you got to do is just every time he says like, hey, do this letter, it's like, no, run a Facebook ad. Right? Like
that is true. There's some
Wait, who is this boy?
strategies.
I know.
He's back.
He is
Ryan
back.
is joining us. Maybe it's permanent. Maybe it's not. Who knows?
Maybe we're permanent. Maybe we're not.
Yeah. None of us
Are any of us permanent?
Exactly. None of us are permanent. But Brian Force is joining us. He's making his presence known because he's like, he loves the shifting market. And he probably reads, I think he reads the Shift Book every night to go to bed.
Nowadays. But you're not wrong. A lot of the strategies in there. You got to get past some of the, you got to remember it's written in 2008,
Yes.
9.
Yeah. I think it was 8.
Yeah. It
Yep.
is interesting to watch about like, oh, here's how I would do this today.
Well, and I have to remind myself of that because Matt's looking for any excuse not to read a book. So I'll get into it. I'll be like, this book's not even updated. There's no reason for me to read it. Everything in here must be useless.
We're not even speaking the same language.
Yeah. And if your first time tuning in, thank you for checking us out. And you can always go and leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and on Apple Podcast. I think it's just called Podcast.
Yeah, which is crazy because I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but I feel like that's not an Apple word. I didn't know what do you think they had to pay to just bogart the rights to just podcast? Because that's what the app's called now.
It was a podcast. It was an Apple word.
Was
They
it?
created the podcast.
Did they?
Yeah, that's why it's
Huh.
called iPod.
Joe Rogan
Podcast.
created the podcast. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? Tom Green created the podcast.
I
He
stand,
actually.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
I wonder what these other companies have to pay to. Now I got to know. You got to Google that in the background. Did they actually trademark the word podcast?
Probably not.
Do they have the right
No.
to just start suing people?
No.
So we're in trouble.
If the iPhone 17 is a flop, are they just going to open up a new revenue stream where they
Yeah.
just start suing people for using the word podcast?
I do use Spotify now more than the Apple Podcast app.
Because it's all in one place. I
Yeah.
do too. I listen to All In on there and some other stuff.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to kind of navigate, and it loads a lot faster. So, look, just leave us a 5-star review on Spotify. Go over to our Facebook group called The Only Real Estate Group Worth Being a Part of. And today's show is sponsored by the Tor Studios, torstudios.com. You want to get a podcast, you want to shoot some video content, get with Jesse over at torstudios.com. So, all right. Shifting market. I'm going to tell you right now, you know, we've said it before, 71% of real estate agents in 2024 did not sell a house. So they felt that market shift real early last year. And the 2024 market, we saw the lowest amount of closed transaction than we've seen since 1995, if I remember, 94, 95.
4.08 million, I believe.
Yep.
Okay.
And, you know, some are saying that it could be around the same. Some are saying more. I've heard a lot of people saying it could be a little bit under the 4. It could be under 4 million for the first time.
So you have said this ad nauseum that money changes hands when problems get solved. So I think what would be really interesting to level set this conversation around how to win in the shifting market is what problems are people facing? Essentially, why is the market shifting, right? What is the conversation that agents should be having with clients? Or maybe let's not even start there. Let's not even start with the conversation that agents should be having with their clients. Let's just start with a purely simple economic conversation. What is causing such a drastic market shift, we believe?
I mean, look, we all said it before on the show. You can't keep throwing free money out there.
Yeah.
So the COVID influx of, the stimulus checks and just everything from that part in reality, and the low interest rates, right? Cheap money. It just caused this feeding frenzy that got way out of control. And when you have a massive run up on prices, not just here in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas market, but you had it across the United States, that run up in demand didn't make sense. It was artificial demand. And it's like playing musical chairs. The music's going to stop sooner or later.
There was also some social factors happening then too. Like disposable income was at an all-time high because people couldn't do the things they wanted to do. Everybody was promised that from now on they're going to be able to work from home. So if you live in Dallas and always wanted to live in South Lake, freaking do it, right? Which everybody's having to walk that back now. But there were some things that were happening too, where people thought fundamentally life was changing and certain doors had opened up to them. And for some people, it probably remained. But that Dallas to South Lake thing, that was a real thing. I had clients who had lived in Lakewood Elementary forever, had always wanted more land. They're like, we can work from home now. We don't have to live in Dallas. Let's go to South Lake.
We had clients relocate here to Dallas or to DFW market and from Austin. They didn't tell their company they were moving because they're like, oh, we're all remote. And we're doing well, and so I'm just not going to say anything. And they brought them back in the office, and they're like, they're freaking out.
I heck of a commute now.
Yes. Yeah, right. I want this to not sound insensitive at all, but like right now, Facebook is reminding me of all the COVID memories, all the lives we were doing back then, and like how we had to get through stuff. I did not lose anyone to COVID. Right, 2020 was a ramp up year for me as well, but I look back on that and I'm like, there was something that was so secure in a world where nobody expected anything from you. You didn't have to go anywhere. Like staying at home was acceptable. Like I'm watching those videos back and I'm like, man, I know COVID sucked for a lot of people, but there was a part of that first couple of months before we knew what was going on that I was like, man, this is kind of a sweet little insulated world I get to live in now with not a ton of responsibility, and it's going to be okay, right?
Look,
like
it's like getting that Best Buy credit card where you don't have to make a payment. Right, it's zero interest, no payments for 60 months.
Mhm.
And what you don't realize is that you should have been paying down that balance, because if you don't, then everything and plus the interest is now accrued and due, and we're having to pay up. And we're starting to see this in the stats, and it's like, all right, why are we having this problem? And if we can start looking at kind of these stats, right now, 90-day late on auto delinquency loans are at an all-time high.
Yeah.
We're seeing people with credit card balances, right? So first off, delinquent credit card rates right now are up 4%, but people that have a balance on a credit card and they're just making the minimum payment, that's it, the bare minimum payment, which means when you do that, your debt continues to go up because you're not actually paying anything down. Right. That is at an all-time high. Since they've started tracking that, it's never been higher.
Yep.
And so we're now getting saddled with debt. And then you start factoring in, okay, last year in 2024, 26% of every refinance opportunity that tried to happen got rejected.
Mhm.
Now, why would someone try to do a refinance in an already higher interest rate market? Why would somebody, because we're hearing homeowners say, why would I trade in my 3 to 4% interest rate and get a higher rate? But now all of a sudden we're seeing people trying to refinance. It's because they're trying to pay off debt that they've been carrying.
They're trying to unlock the equity that they have. So
yes.
That, right?
Then the last part is, one of our lending buddies sent this over to us, is that we've seen an increase in FHA and VA loan delinquencies. That is now starting to increase. And so when you kind of start looking at, all right, here's the cracks in that foundation and what's going to cause that house of cards to fall, it's a little bit of that combination of everything, where eventually all this debt that's coming up, and you're trying to figure out, all right, if I can't refinance, what am I going to do?
Yep.
All right, I can't pay my car note. I'm not going to give up my car because I need that to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what you just said, that I'm not going to give up? I think this is part of the mentality too, because part of this text message that you're not talking about is the essentially month-to-month loan on DoorDash, right? That so many people are ordering DoorDash, and now a company has thought it was a good idea to go into essentially, like, it looks like it's gonna be a monthly, because I dove a little deeper on it.
Karma.
Yeah, you can like pay. You can have your DoorDash, not pay for it that day, and then just get a bill at the end of the month like your credit card, which if nobody sees the insane can of worms that is opening is crazy.
I've long been an advocate of capitalism with guardrails, just because there are limits to my optimism around the human condition. Meaning, I don't fully believe people are always good all the time.
Same.
So I believe that fully unregulated capitalism with no boundaries leads to things that are predatory because people can't control themselves. I think that having the ability to pay for a DoorDash bill at the end of the month is in some ways predatory, because people that are addicted to that type of delivery crap food are also usually not the most responsible people with their finances.
What is the major aspect of an American Express card that shows financial responsibility? Don't you have to pay it down every month?
Yeah.
Isn't that the idea?
You have to pay.
It's also why it's the hardest freaking credit
you can push
card.
the boundaries a bit, but they tighten up on you pretty quick.
But in general, it's
Yeah.
the hardest credit card to get as a normal person.
Well, because it's not a credit card. It's a charge card.
Which
Exactly.
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying is this preys on people with low financial IQs, probably low incomes, right? Like probably no real self-control around this type of stuff. And it's just going to put people further and further and further into debt.
So as we're just dissecting this, right? What do we have here? We've got, and this is part of the 5 keys as we're dissecting this. So,
Education is the first key.
yes, and understanding, right? Like it sounds depressing when we start going through this. Like, all right, you're a homeowner, interest, insurance is now going up through the roof. If you have high property taxes like Texas and Florida, right? Property taxes are now starting to eat away at a lot of people's, financial abilities to, maintain their home or even keep their homes.
Yeah.
And so you start to weigh that in, with high credit card or high auto loan balances and auto loan payments. And now we have high interest rates and higher inflation. Everything costs more.
Mm-hmm.
It plays right into the lies that real estate agents tell themselves around why there's not opportunities for them right now, though. Like if you're not understanding the market aspects of this and the human condition aspect of this, you're going to convince yourself probably that nobody wants to work with you, or there's nobody really out there buying, or there's no real opportunity. And that does play into tactic 1. You have to have the right mindset around this, and understanding that this is kind of what's going on, I think will help agents a ton when it comes to finding the opportunities, because you do need to be more efficient in your business right now. You do need to go after business that makes sense. And I think a lot of agents right now, I know I've fallen into this. I did this last year when all the commission stuff came down. I was lying to myself about why I wasn't going to be successful instead of just looking at it as a whole and trying to attack it differently, right?
So to make it really simple, I'm going to try to not get too far down a rabbit hole or go on a tangent. It's my first show back. But this is the education takeaway. This is the opportunity. If we talk about money changes hands when problem gets solved, this is the opportunity. We talked about this on the show years ago. I think it was late 2022, early 2023. We had a long conversation that I think came true almost to a T. And that was because the messaging back then was like, the housing crash is coming. The crash is coming. And Jesse would just make thumbnails with explosions and nuclear warheads going off. And it was just
There's a lot of that.
There's like a lot of that, like 10 episodes in a row. And we kept standing by the premise that like, there's not a crash. And honestly, if you want to use that word, a housing market, quote unquote, crash, really isn't even the worst thing for consumers, because that implies that there's still momentum in one direction, right? The market either goes up or goes down. It's either advantageous to sellers, it's advantageous to buyers. What we predicted, and I think it came true to a T, was a period of freezing where it's just not particularly advantageous from a financial standpoint to either buy or sell. And the reason that came to a head for a couple of years, and now we're starting to see the market thaw out, is you can imagine the economy running at 150 miles an hour down the freeway, and we just keep increasing the speed. One of the things I don't think gets talked about enough that really played a big part in all this is we didn't just print a few $1 trillion and pump it into the economy during COVID. We got ahead of the curve by prematurely cutting rates to almost zero in anticipation of a big economic slowdown that never came. And I don't think we talk about that enough. If you guys remember, rates didn't go down. The Fed funding rate didn't go down to like zero until a few months into COVID. We had this big head fake on the securities markets where they thought everything was going to crash. I bought all the Carnival Cruise stock I possibly could because it went to almost zero. We're up on it a ton now. Let's go, Jesse. And then within a matter of 45 days, the market was ripping, right? But we'd also cut rates dramatically. And so we did two things. We cut rates to almost nothing, and we pumped a bunch of money into the economy. And it's just very, very simplistic terms. You can understand that's like just like increasing the speed of your car down the freeway. You're just at an irresponsible breakneck pace now, because not only are people getting a bunch of free money, they're able to borrow more money at incredibly low interest rates. And that's why you saw, like, we just witnessed in real time from 2020 till late 2022 what hyperinflation looks like in real time. When you have a home that goes on the market and you put on the market for 500 and it sells for 650, and the person pays a $150,000 appraisal guarantee, that's hyperinflation. That's just exactly what it is, right? And so we experienced a very hyperinflationary environment in the real estate market. And then what you have to do to combat that inflationary environment is you have to slam the brakes incredibly hard, unfortunately. Jess and I would talk about this every day during 2023. They've got to raise rates. Like, they should be raising rates now. They should be raising, or through 2022. They should be raising rates now. It wasn't until late 2022 they started raising rates, and they had to work so quickly at that point. That's like slamming both feet on the brakes of the car when you're going 150 miles an hour. The breakneck speed, you just have to halt it so quickly. Now, the way that this shows up in the environment or in the economy is we ran asset prices up. Like, we compressed 15 years worth of appreciation into 3 years. We ran asset prices up so much on cheap money and low rates that now when you raise rates, all of a sudden it doesn't make economic sense to purchase a home at these new prices. We've re-leveled the playing field for prices. Well, now I have to borrow at 7.5. It doesn't make sense to buy at 7.5 when I could have bought last year at 3. I can't afford that payment, right? And then what happens is the people that would have moved, they're going, well, I just got like a 40% increase in home value. The only way I'm going to sell is if I can sell for this price. Otherwise, I'm not even putting it on the market because I have a 3% rate that I refinanced at. And by the way, we're not even talking about the refinance element, which locked in a ton more phantom equity for people who wouldn't have otherwise had those rates, right? They weren't married to the rates that they purchased at, but they became married to the rates that they refinanced at. So now they don't want to sell, even though they've owned the home for 15 years. They're on the normal cycle that they would have sold on. They're not selling now because they still would have to borrow at a higher rate. So that's where the lack of inventory comes from. You have a normal 7 to 10 year cycle. But if that 7 to 10 year cycle gets interrupted by the fact that my new rate that I'm purchasing at is 7.5, and the rate that I just refinanced at last year is 3.5, and asset prices have gone up over 40% in the last few years, I want to lock that equity in. I don't want to sell right now because I don't want to pay more.
So let's look at it.
So now you get that slowdown.
Let's look at it now that we are here, though, right? Like,
so that's where I was getting to.
Yeah,
I told you I wouldn't ramble, but then
let's look at it now that we're here, right? So you're a real estate agent, and whether you've been in it for a long time or you're brand new, I don't think it matters right now because we're kind of both at square one, other than the veteran agent has a book of previous business they can tap into,
right,
and branding and everything else like that. The first thing that you got to do is you said, all right, money changes hands when problems are solved. So let's figure out where the problems are.
Yes.
Motivation has changed. During your COVID market, people were selling because prices were higher. They could upgrade, cheap money, etc. Money is no longer cheap. Prices are higher. Inflation's higher. So the motivation for a seller is completely different than what it was 2 to 3 years ago. So once we address that, and that's one of the keys to a shifting market is, and if you go through the shift book, I highly recommend it. I mean, regardless of if you're with Keller Williams or you're different brokerage or what you think about Gary Keller, you go through this shift book. And like Matt said, remove where it says print advertising and just make it social media advertising. There's 12 tactics that you can analyze on here. And the first one is like, get real, get right. And it's mindset in action. And it says when a market shift, there's only one thing to do with it. You shift with it. And in truth, there are 2 shifts that you must make, a mental shift and then an action shift. And mentally, you start preparing like, okay, I'm going to use Matt as an example. Matt went through the highs of the COVID market and the lows of the low as the shift happened, and started to have, self-doubts about whether this business is going to make it or not. And your business was in the crapper for a while.
Yeah.
And, you can only have a pity party for so long because it doesn't pay very well. and you started to take action. You got your mindset right, pulled your head out of you and got the mindset and started taking action. And there's really two things that an agent needs to do that they have ownership of, which is, their lead gen and their lead conversion.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. And I had to get really, like, I was in denial about where my business was at that point too. Like, I kept waiting for the agent referrals to show back up. I kept waiting for people to call me. We talked about this a couple of years ago, that the agent referral business and the client referral business, those are down right now, right? People are handcuffed to their houses because of great interest rates and perceived equity and all of those types of things. I had to get really serious about that. And then the action I had to take was just, some of it wasn't stuff I wanted to do. When times are a little bit tougher, you have to be honest. We've said this on the show about you can cherry pick some of the stuff you want to do, but you can't cherry pick everything. You're going to have to do some stuff that makes you uncomfortable. And for me, there were certain phone call leads that I just did not want to call because they made me certainly really uncomfortable. I got really real with that. I took the beating that comes with the November and December lead generation because it's a little fruitless. Right. And now I'm seeing that show up in tons of buyer opportunity in my world right now. Right. I mean, everybody kind of talks about buyers. Maybe this is people's limiting belief that nobody will buy in this market. Yes, they absolutely will. I have 6 pre-qualified buyers right now actively looking for homes. That's more listings than I have on the hook right now. I can tell you that.
Well, that's the opportunity that's showing up right now. So to go just one step further down the rabbit hole, this is where the opportunity is showing up now. So everything that I just talked about leading up to this point, now we're starting to see the other side. We're starting to see the market become unthawed. And the reason for it, and I want to just double tap on something you said really quickly. There's always opportunities in every market. A mentor of mine talks about this all the time. There's never been a market that hasn't provided you enough opportunity to hit your goals. Your goals aren't big enough for a market not to be able to provide it, where you're just like, there's not enough available market share for me to even hit my goals. That's never existed. There is always enough opportunity for you to hit your business goals. So I don't want anything that I'm saying to turn you off in a way that like, oh, well, then that's just not possible. It absolutely is, no matter what your goals are. But you're starting to see the thawing out happening, and there's going to be much, much more opportunity. It's going to be on the buy side. Because what's happening is something eventually has to give. When you start to get into an inflationary environment and you locked in you spent a lot of cash out of pocket, and then a lot of people, their lifestyles gotten to a certain way or whatever. When that inflation starts to catch up in other areas, right? Auto prices have gone up, grocery prices have gone up, all the things have gone up except wages. Wages have not gone up, and they're not continuing to creep up right now. The labor market isn't such that they're not going to catch up to where asset prices are.
We talked about this on the show,
right?
This would have been probably 22, I believe it was.
Yeah,
we brought it up that everything we're talking about, the high prices of homes, that also correlates to, again, it goes back to wages.
Yeah.
All these increases, but I believe, if I remember correctly, that wages have only increased by 10% or something like that since 1970.
Right. The correlation between wages and asset prices long term is much stronger than the correlation between interest rates and asset prices. You could cut interest rates to zero, and eventually, if asset prices got out of whack, the market would still have to revert back to the mean, because people just can't afford stuff past a certain price. You don't pay interest on a Snickers bar, but I guarantee you, if they started charging $15 for them, people would stop buying them. They're just not going to pay that much money, right? And so now where we're at is, a lot of people have a lot of equity in their homes, but it's not equity they can unlock without selling. They're having other headwinds that they're facing in their world right now because wages haven't kept up with the amount of money that they're spending in other areas of their life. And so when you're starting to see these statistics around credit card debt, when you're starting to see these statistics around loan defaults, you're seeing loan defaults mostly in the first-time home buyer space. What would be considered the first-time home buyer space, because they're the most susceptible to delinquency if other areas of their life become more expensive, right? If groceries become more expensive, it's going to affect the people that are buying their third home less than it's going to affect the people that are buying their first home. So what you're now seeing is that people are hanging on to the equity that they've had in their home, they've run up, because they either haven't owned it very long, or they don't want to sell because they don't want to go buy another home at a higher interest rate, but they're running out of choices and options here. And so when that first wave, which will most likely, by the way, this is an interesting element to this perfect storm, will most likely be the baby boomers. who are, geez, Jesse, you would have to do this on the fly. How many baby boomers are most likely to sell their home over the next 10 years? It's an incredible number. When that wave starts to hit, when the first wave of them goes, look, I'm not paying this much in insurance and property taxes anymore. I could sell my home right now, move into an amazing apartment or retirement facility, live the rest of my life off the equity that I've made. It's an astonishing amount. Yeah, I don't know what the hard number is, but it's a lot, right? When that first wave over the next decade, 9 million homes owned by baby boomers are expected to come onto the market. That is over the next decade, that accounts for 1.1 million homes per year. That would be 1/4 of the amount of homes that have sold in the last 365 days in America. Do you understand what a significant increase in inventory that would be if people actually did that? Now, what could exacerbate the velocity of that is when people start to see their neighbors selling for a little bit cheaper because they want to unlock that equity and they realize they've still got a pretty good amount of even if they sell for 20% less than their asking price, they still got a really great run up since COVID. That's going to continue to level set prices downward with every new wave of inventory that comes on the market. And so I say all of that to say the opportunity now is asset prices are going to come down. And I don't want to say that again in a way I feel like it's a dirty thing to say. I think we got in our heads as real estate agents that we're never allowed to say that prices are coming down.
Sure.
It's like a dirty taboo thing to say. So I will just be the first to put it out there publicly. I believe asset prices will drop by 25% nationwide from their 2022 highs. I fundamentally believe that, and for a very simple premise. In 2018, the median income in America was 133% of what the median income needed to be to buy the median home. Does everybody follow me there? On the median nationwide, people made 133% monthly what they needed to make their monthly mortgage payment for the median home. Does anybody know what it is currently?
Is it like 80?
72. Currently, the median income in America is 72% when you adjust for interest rates and asset prices of what they need to make to buy the median home in America. So I'm not basing this off of any sort of Fibonacci sequence or deep dive data. We're probably 28% overpriced from our 2022 highs,
which was an artificial increase.
Right. And so there's only two ways to correct that long term. People either need to make more money or asset prices need to come down to spur demand. And it won't happen overnight. I'm not saying that. It's probably going to be some combination of the two. Wages will come up a little bit. They always do. But asset prices are going to come down. And that's good for buyers, by the way. That's like me telling you things are on sale. I don't feel bad about that as a real estate agent.
And I think
that's the opportunity.
I think prices come down in certain segments, right? So
Sure.
Like your first time home buyer segment, I don't think that we see prices coming down. Like Matt, you're the new construction, if you're selling something at 350, you're not going to see a 28% increase or decrease in that. Right?
No, where you are seeing some of those opportunities is where we've always seen it, when there's somebody who's living in a new construction area, a large planned subdivision, and they bought 3 years ago, and now they want to sell, and they're still up. Now they're up against phase 4 being built,
right?
And they're offering builder incentives and title and a refrigerator and blinds and gutters, and they're getting their asses handed to them.
That is a good point.
Yeah,
I mean, my wife just closed on a new construction, and she negotiated about a 15% discount from their current asking price, and they did the rate buy down. So this is how prices come down, right? Yep. We're all like, I don't think prices will come down that much. It's like, well, you just negotiated D.R. Horton for 15% off. That means prices came down 15% because that's going to level set for the entire neighborhood.
Yeah, Yeah, and when we talk about 350, that's the market value price, not the listing price, right? So obviously, the average home seller right now, if we go look at stats, and this is again part of your 5 steps is, one, getting your mental mindset right to be able to go take action. And there's always something, and Brian has said this at a high level, especially, as he built a team, as he shut down a team, is focusing on your mindset. You can't control the market, but you can control your outlook and your response on the market.
Absolutely.
Right? You control the controllables. And, part of this is becoming an expert in understanding the stats. Now, Brian has on a different level. He understands, more of the stocks and the finances and how companies run. You don't have to do that per se, but it's understanding where numbers lie and kind of future casting out, where maybe opportunities are headed. So if we look at, this week alone, it's the, what is it? The week of March 24th, and new listings are up 16.5% compared to the same time last year. Inventory levels are up 30.3% compared to the same time last year. Now, this is nationally. Price reductions that are happening on the current houses that are on the market are up 9.2%. We're seeing almost 10% of the houses on the market have price reductions in total. Now, week over week, for this week, we saw a 34% increase in price reduction.
10% more price reductions. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So now homeowners are starting to, they're slowly getting on board that they're overpriced.
Yeah.
It's taking longer to sell. We're seeing, while interest rates are down just a hair, it's a little bit down. It's 0.2. It's less than 0.25% down.
That price reduction number would be higher if agents were more savvy at getting price reductions too, because there are a lot more price reductions out there that need to happen.
This is
agents
a
just
very
can't ask for
good point that you're making, and I want to double tap on that just for a second, only because I don't know why when I start talking about prices coming down, I start to feel like I'm alienating all of my fellow companions and stuff. Like I'm not, and I'll explain it to you. Right, like I'm not saying prices are going to drop 25% from market value. What I'm saying is agents have continued to overprice homes well into this shift for a long time now. And that's what makes homes continue to sit. If agents were having stronger conversations and being realistic around pricing, prices wouldn't, or homes wouldn't be sitting as long. They'd still be selling, and prices would have never gotten to the point where they're at now.
And
I believe they will drop from their artificially inflated prices.
Sellers want price reductions too. I'm speaking to agents directly when I say this. Don't be afraid to have that conversation, right? Like, first off, set up a little bit of infrastructure once you're on the market to have weekly communication with your people and to make price adjustment conversations way easier. But people are looking. I'm taking a listing right now that will be signed and on the market next Wednesday. We're going to get it signed tonight. It'll be on the market next Wednesday. They are coming. They're an expired, canceled listing. They wanted to do a price reduction, and their agent was just didn't even push back, just didn't suggest it. It broke down the confidence. They canceled with her. I ran across them. They're like, we need to sell. It's another listing that I'm taking it probably 5% off of their last list price. And you have to be within a couple percent to get your offer right now. There's so much inventory that if you're off by 10%, even 5%, people are just going to go on to something else.
So let's turn that into the opportunity. This is where I'm trying to take this conversation. This is why this is good news. The market is breaking free from its freeze, from its thaw. And here's how it can happen if you are an agent that is really doing right by your clients. Okay, so let's level set on a couple things here. Rates are not going back to 3.5%. 6.5%, 6.75% historically is pretty reasonable. Now, the reason, and I'll kind of give my own counterpoint here, the reason that I hate that argument is because asset prices are the things that are inflated. So whenever people were like, in the 80s, it was 18% and it was this and that. Like, if you're only talking about rates in a vacuum, then you're not making a reasonable, compelling argument, because rates are only relevant to the asset price on which you're borrowing the money, right? So a 6.5%, a 6.75% rate is very high on an asset that's already overpriced, right? It's not high on a regularly priced asset, a market value asset. That's a really historically good interest rate. It's pretty normal historically. And so as asset prices move back towards where they should be, now rates are all of a sudden not too high again. But here's the thing about that is, if my sellers are showing motivation because they want to move, they have a life, they want to move on to the next chapter. If I am a buyer right now, I have a lot of opportunity because I could probably negotiate that asset price pretty close to market value right now. And I bet you I could get them to chip in for something like a rate buy down. I bet you there's terms that I could come to with the seller where it's a win-win, where I get myself in an advantageous situation from the borrowing side, and I negotiate that asset price closer to market value. That's how markets become unlocked again. I would be shouting that from the rooftops for all of my buyers right now.
That's the number one problem, though, is that the agents we're not treating this, and we've said this on the show for 237 episodes underneath, kind of subliminally, but like, we're not experts in this field. We're not treating ourselves like we need to be the experts. We're not studying this. We're not implementing, you know, I say tactics in the most complimentary way, not the sleazy way, is understanding how the interest rate buy down works. And then how does that actually help that home buyer, so that you can go explain it to them and say, you can pay $250,000, $300,000, $350,000 for this house. But it's better for you to do that and for us to get 6% seller concessions, so over $18,000,
Yes.
so that you can buy your rate down. It's actually like you're now getting your payments now based on a purchase price of 80,000 less, 90,000. We're not understanding that. And if we really go back and look at this, that, like, as you were kind of saying that, Brian and Matt, like, you know, as like 4 steps to make money in this business, you know, number 1 is lead generation. Number 2 is lead conversion. Number 3 is actually sell your listings. Don't let them expire.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's more often than not, I have agents coming to me and asking me, what could I do differently? How do we get more exposure? The number 1 question I ask is, have you dropped the price? And they're like, we're priced right. Well, we're not priced right if you don't have showings. During the 2008 crash that was all the way up through 2012, I could still, even on slow listing areas, I could still get anywhere from 8 to 12 showings. And that was when everyone was running scared. Right? You go back to reading the Shift book, and it talks about it. The opening line, the introductory line, is the number of transactions have dropped significantly. Inventory has reached all-time highs. Buyers have never been more reluctant. Fear is rampant. Anxiety high. People are getting out of the business left and right. Sounds like right now, doesn't it? Well, that was 1979. And then in 1987, it happened again, where interest rates jumped up to 18% and people were still selling houses. So, you know, we talk about, again, and we're going to keep saying this till we're blue in the face. We've said this on the show multiple times. And we're doing that on purpose, so you can come back and actually listen, because as you start to pick up on what we're putting down, is that, you know, there's a lot of foresight here that's actually come true. And there's never a bad time to buy a house. So you're hearing all this, Brian saying, hey, I believe that prices are going to drop. There's probably a lot more people that echo that same statement and belief. And they're like, well, how can I, you know, justify getting a buyer into buying a house if prices are going to drop? Well, we're not buying this right now for an immediate increase in value. Right? When you were buying in 2008, guess what? Prices were still falling when those home buyers were still buying houses. They would buy their house and the next day it was worth less.
That's the entire conversation. And this is like, I love that you're saying that, because to us that have been in the business for a long time, it makes perfect sense. You should be buying right now. You should be looking to buy right now. You have more negotiating power as a buyer right now. You have leverage, and you can be the influence on asset prices coming back in line with wages. I'm not saying you should be going and buying a house and offering $25,000 over asking price like you were 3 years ago. What I'm saying is that if I'm on the market right now, I'm probably slower in showings. I'm probably overpriced. I probably haven't done the price reduction that I should have done because my agent hasn't advised me. I would be the buyer that comes in and offers that's all relative. I would be comfortable making a substantially below asking price offer right now and asking for closing costs on top of it and negotiating that out and finding a win-win. As an agent, you can go and do your job these days. And that's actually negotiating a good deal, feeling the market out, and negotiating a good deal for your clients. It's why I care so much about the economics behind this. I know that I talk at a level that seems like it has nothing to do with homes sometimes, but it's important to me to understand the economic fundamentals so I know what people are dealing with, because when I go in a negotiation, my job is to help negotiate something that's going to be the primary driver of wealth for that person for the rest of their life. It's kind of my job to know the economics behind it.
Well, and one of the things that this talks about is finding the motivated. And I think a lot of agents think that means like, I need to find a buyer who wants to buy. No, you may already have the buyer who wants to buy. You need to find the seller who's motivated to make a deal for them. Finding the motivated party in a transaction isn't always about just going and getting the lead who agrees to say yes to you, right? There's a lot of different ways to find the motivation. And what the Shift book talks about, and one of the first things I ever remember being told about it, is that Gary Keller says in there somewhere, essentially, like, there are some markets where you just have to work harder. And finding the motivated people, it is a little bit harder right now. There are less of them. You do have to make more calls, do more open houses, but the basic stuff is working. And that's where it's really great for, I think, agents who are budget sensitive right now, or if you're a new agent hearing this, the basic stuff, which for some of us wasn't working because we had to do too much. I mean, when Brian and I had a team, like our P&L would make you throw up, right? Like with all the things you were having to try and do to bring in business. Here's the good thing. Expireds who are serious about selling are more serious about talking to agents than they have ever been before. For sale by owners who are struggling and languishing on market are going to want to talk to real serious agents more than ever before. Open houses are legitimately working for meeting buyers. Those are all about zero cost things. Other than paying for the data of expires, which runs you about $110 a month, you can have all three of those major lead sources meeting, ready to go, motivated people, budget conscious, if you're willing to get the right mindset and take action, which, by the way, covers 3 of the first 4 tactics that we talk about.
100%. And they're hiding in plain sight. Motivated buyers and sellers are not hiding under a rock right now. It's the same people that have been on the market or wanting to get in the market as before. Your conversations have changed, right? What you actually have right now, and I know Kelderman will resonate this in a big way. What you have right now is the ability to have valuable conversations, especially with your buyers. You really haven't been able to have a super comfortable, compelling conversation with a buyer in a while, because going all the way back to 2021, the conversation with buyers was very simple. How much extra money do you have? And how much of it are you willing to put down and guarantee the price of this home to get it? That's not a fun conversation to have with buyers.
When what was their motivation to buy, right?
Everybody else was.
So everyone, prices were running up. Money was cheap. They were trying to get out of, maybe they needed more space because they were working from home. Their kids were driving them crazy. Their husbands or wives were driving them crazy because they were on top of each other, and they needed a backyard. They needed another office space. That was their motivation. Again, a lot of times we do too much of trying to drive this as a primary reason of a wealth builder. That is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to wanting to buy a house. People aren't thinking about just wanting to buy a house because they're thinking in 10, 20 years, if they keep it that long, that this is going to be worth massively more, and a potential retirement or a way to upgrade. That is a second or third reason, maybe even a fourth reason why they're doing it.
I have never said to anybody, well, renting is like more expensive than buying, even with 15% interest rates, because it's not their primary driver. Right? Like, somebody who's renting and not deciding to buy is not doing it because they're doing it because they're monthly price sensitive. They're down payment sensitive, right? Their Uncle Jeff told them that buying real estate was the worst idea. They listened to Grant Cardone's dumb shit, whatever it is, right? Like, there's some reason why they're not doing it. And it's very rarely because they don't want to be wealthier in the future. It's just, that's not what their number 1, 2, or 3 priority is.
I think emotionally, you're right, for sure. Where you can have valuable conversations now, is what I'm saying, that you couldn't have before is, at least in my opinion, it's very difficult to have a conversation about building wealth with a home buyer when that conversation is like, hey, I know this costs 20% more than it did last year, and you're going to have to bring extra money to the table, but it's definitely going to help you build wealth. That feels like a really tough conversation for me to have. And that's the interesting thing about markets, is that when the market gets really hot, you don't really have to have that conversation. People want to buy a house because everybody else is buying a house. You can have, this is where it comes back to actually being a good agent, doing your job now. I can have a realistic conversation with you that's valuable about what I can do for you with my experience and my representation to help you not only build wealth, but the thing that's going to speak to you is get the home for cheaper and get you a lower interest rate. For that on the fence buyer right now, that person that thinks like, I'm just waiting for the market to crash, it's not a great time to buy, right? I can have a realistic objection handler and conversation there. It's like, hey, if I can take 20 minutes to show you how I can negotiate a price that works for you and get 2 points off your interest rate, would that be worth 20 minutes of your time to have that conversation, right? And then you have a realistic buyer consultation about it. I can't guarantee that I can get the rate buy down. I could do my best, but here's my experience level. Here's what's going on economically across the country. And here's why I believe it is a great time to be in the market as a buyer. And here's what I'm prepared to do to negotiate the best price for you. That's something that if you came to me and you showed me, wow, on a $500,000 house, you might be able to negotiate it for $425 right now and get them to pay for a rate buy down. You're doing exponentially more for me in my wealth building journey and my family than you were 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I hate to say it, but yes, you were kind of just opening the door because the houses were selling themselves.
Yeah.
That's the value that you bring. And that's, again, why I care so deeply about the economics, because I'm empowering you right now as a buyer's agent to go out and just crush it. If you were a buyer's agent right now, one of my main focuses would be, how do I sell buyers on new construction right now? Because that will set someone up for a massive wealth building journey in the future. New construction is so deeply on sale right now, it's not even funny. If you're willing to commute, drive a little bit further out, depending on what your geographic location is, they're the most motivated sellers in the market right now because their carrying costs are the highest and they have no emotional attachment to the home. New construction is on sale right now. And if you're not a buyer's agent trying to take advantage of that, you're missing the best part of the market because this is where things thaw out and you can just go kill it right now.
Well, it goes back to money changes hands when problems are solved. So where are the problems, right? And in markets like these, where we are, regardless if anybody wants to agree with this or not, we are now shifted in a buyer's market. There are sub-markets that are in certain parts of the states that they're still saying they're getting multiple offers or houses, inventory still tight, that their time's coming.
That will stop.
Yeah, that their time's coming.
The only reason is because inventory is tight. And for the reasons that I talked about before, the seller's pain hasn't gotten great enough yet that the inventory wave is coming.
Yep.
They're still holding out for trying to preserve that phantom equity.
And that's the biggest mistake agents are making right now is they're sleeping on buyer opportunity, right? Like they just don't, again, it is a free lead source. It is, I mean, 49 of my first 50 transactions, that's not a made up number, were buyer transactions, right? They are ripe for agents who are not because of any other reason than the buyers are the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to the lead source. You can find them the most places than you can find sellers. The conversation's not as intimidating, right? Sellers sometimes, even if you've been doing this for a couple of years and the seller hasn't sold a house in 20 years, talking to somebody about their house can feel intimidating to some agents. I think agents right now are so heavily focused on interest rates and buyers aren't going to want to buy. And they're still adjusting to having the buyer consultation conversation, which is, you know, if your buyer consult hasn't changed since last August, that's priority one, right? Like and agents are just sleeping on that. I'm telling you, I love this market. It is a basic market and buyers are everywhere if you're willing to do a little bit of extra work.
But to me, my message, and I just put this out. So if you look on like even the social media stuff I'm putting, like I just did an Instagram video and a TikTok video for this is, in my opinion, it's the best buying opportunity for a home buyer since 2008. We haven't seen something of this caliber when it comes to being able to negotiate pretty much anything you want. Again, there's always exceptions. I just put a buyer in a contract. We went full asking price because there was another offer in there. It was a special house. You know, this buyer is actually loving. They didn't even care. They were happy to not have to go over. They didn't have to do an appraisal guarantee, which sounds weird in this market. But on the rest of them, I mean, we have clients that are getting 3.9, 4.9% interest rates. That's new construction. You can solve those problems. Now, it may feel like you're not, you know, having enough opportunities. And that's because if you look at it, the number of sellable leads has decreased dramatically. You know, buyer sentiment is very low, right?
Yeah.
The buyer sentiment is saying it's not a good time to buy. Yep. And we've said this on the show before, that anytime that the buyer sentiment or any sentiment is saying something, do the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Warren Buffett says that, right? You be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Yep. And if I'm a buyer, don't wait until the interest rates, everyone says the Fed's going to drop rates and drastically drop. It's not happening.
No.
And even if it does, by the time that you see that and you're ready, so is everyone else. And they're going to be stampeding. And now it's cost you more, the cost of waiting.
All of my buyer opportunity right now showed up last year, right? The buyers that I am currently working with, open house from last year, phone call from return to the website last year, right? And so for the agents who are doing that, because Nick and I have a couple of agents who are in this position right now, it's not a lack of action, right? They're putting in action. Maybe they're not saying the right things on the phone. Maybe they're not really figuring out, but if you're an agent who's in that position, everything other than setting appointments is just noise. Right? Like you've got to get face-to-face with people. The way to overcome what Nick's talking about, it's a two-part process. It's follow up until they give you the appointment, if you feel like the lead is viable, and then get face-to-face with them. That is the only way. Long extended conversations. I'm converting 0 business on phone call one right now, right? Like you've got not only to find the motivated people, but you've got to get face-to-face with people or on a Zoom call or send them something that helps you differentiate yourself, like a video text or whatever. If you're doing the actions and not seeing it result in contracts or even appointments, everything else is just noise right now. You have to get in front of people.
Get in front of people and practice and train and get educated. This is what really throws people off in shifting markets is the conversations are different and they're not ready to have different conversations. It's just the truth. Again, I know that I can get on tangents on these things. That's why I so deeply care about what's happening with the world, because it empowers you to have better conversations around what's happening with the market. If you did this in any other aspect of life, how much easier would it be to succeed, right? Like if I was trying to convince somebody to go on vacation somewhere and they were like, I was like, you should really go to Italy. And they're like, whoa, what's that like? I'm like, I don't know. I've never been there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what are my chances of you going to Italy?
Yeah.
But if they're like, oh, how's Italy? And I'm like, it's fantastic. Here's a really great place in Tuscany that we visited. And you tell the stories, right? Like people are gonna be like, I want to go to Italy, right? If I have no idea what I think about the market or what's going to happen or why, or at least the fundamentals of how we got here, my ability to have a conversation with a buyer around what this opportunity looks like is very minimal. I'm just a door opener in that case. And you have the ability as a buyer agent right now, especially, to be so much more than that. So learn, put in time to understand what's happening in the market.
And what statistical odds are you looking for, by the way? If we know that 7 out of 10 real estate agents didn't close a deal last year, if you need to visualize that, just picture a football field. We've all seen it. Now imagine there's 10 real estate agents standing on the side of it. 3 of them walk on the field. The other 7 stand there forever. There's never been a greater time for you to run down the field and take market share. Like, what are you waiting for?
And what Brian just said is on page 58 of the shift, where it talks about your message matters, right? The message has to match the market. And if you kind of think about why would, ask yourself these questions. Why would someone want to contact you in this market? And then what would they get if they did contact you?
Yeah.
And if you're not able to articulately explain and effectively explain what's going on in a matter that, like Brian said, I've never been to Italy, and if I ask you that, if you actually have been, maybe even if you haven't, but you read enough about it,
right,
that you could paint the Tuscany villages and the food and the
does
smell.
this in episodes of Friends.
Yes, he does.
Does he?
Mount Tibidabo or something like that.
But if Brian did that in a way, and I'm like, holy shit, we need to go there. Have you been? You're like, no, but I've read a lot about it. I'm like, well, you sold me. You painted the picture and you sold me. It's the same thing as an agent that's never owned a home, but can talk about home ownerships and the feeling of it. People buy on emotions. And then also when it comes to selling, we've got to eliminate some of that emotional part, especially, I've got a client right now, best case scenario, they write a $32,000 check to get out of their house. Probably it's not going to be a best case. Worst case scenario, it's somewhere in the $80,000 range.
Solar panels?
Nope, no solar panels. They bought it 3 years ago.
Okay.
And job relocation.
Yep.
So asset prices.
So, and I will tell you too, that's the other thing too. Just slight little side note, like the people who live out of state and own property here, they are your number one sellers. The majority of the listings I have right now are not sell buys. It's people who I have a shocking amount of people in California right now who I'm selling their houses here in Dallas because that's just where they are now.
Yeah.
You know,
they gotta go back.
And they've got to go back. You have to like make this really sticky too. One of the things that we didn't really get to, but is like social media right now. I love how much agents are talking about social media. I think it's really great. They're trying it out. But if all you're getting is likes from other real estate agents, it's ineffective social media marketing. Yeah. Okay. Like that's not your target audience. Now, if you're doing recruiting videos, fantastic, great job. But if you're doing stuff that's consumer based and just all of your agent friends are liking it, I love that they support you. And know that that's your messaging is not reaching all the people that you want it to.
I saw this reel today of Mark Wahlberg from Boogie Nights when he's sitting in front of the mirror, and then like the message is like realtors when they're about to go and make a TikTok instead of prospecting, or make a TikTok
what scene it is
like realtors that are going to go make a TikTok that 7 people see instead of prospecting. He's like, "You're a star." It was so fitting, man.
Brian, let me ask you this: you are building out a coaching program for some brokerages, right? And it's a program, an accountability program, a production program that's going to help other coaches hold their agents accountable. Do you have in there go make 5 TikTok videos or social media videos, or do you have it where it's back to the basics of phone calls, reach outs, face to faces, door knocks, events,
Well, I have a lot of back to the basics. I would never shy away from the basics, but to add to what you're saying, just to put it, maybe make a little more context around it, I don't care what you do as long as it works, and we're going to have a standard and accountability for what works. What we do in our productivity programs, and we've done this forever on our teams, is boil down your goals into your conversion rates and how many appointments do you need to run and how many appointments do you need to set a week to be successful, right? We had a rule on our team that if you weren't running at least 2 appointments a week, you weren't hitting your goals. And so I know that the basics work. So that's why those are always going to be part of whatever coaching program or team or organization that we run. I know that when I pick up the phone, it's only a matter of time before I hit my goals. Right? Certain things might get me there faster. My strengths might get me there faster. I'm not saying don't go and make a ton of videos and content. It is 2025. I think you should be building your brand and making a lot of content. What I'm saying is, if that is your strategy and it is not immediately getting you the amount of appointments that you know you need to get to hit your goals, then it should not be the only thing you're doing. Yep. There's no excuse for not hitting your appointment goal every week. Plain and simple is my philosophy. Matt, there's always enough people out there to talk to.
Yep. I'm going to piggyback on that. Matt, so you built a lot of your business in the beginning off of social media.
Mm-hmm.
And then how quickly did that die off when you stopped?
Oh, I mean, relatively immediately.
Yep.
You know, that's probably one of the major reasons why I haven't. Now, you want to know the crazy thing about this though? It dropped off, but I still get consumer leads a few a year from my social media, right? Like
enough to live off of?
Absolutely not. No, not at all. And I will also say that was back when I was just living off of that, right? Like now I was part of a brokerage that I had made a name for myself in and a team that I'd made a name for myself in. So there was lots of opportunity coming outside of that social media too. The social media was there to remind everybody how badass I was, but it was done through the relationship aspect first, the face-to-face aspect, the doing good in other areas, and then getting up to speak in front of people, right? Like all of that is how the social media started.
So a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. Yeah, absolutely.
And then second part of that is, you know, how much are you relying on AI to go prospect and lead generate for you?
I use AI. I don't use AI to lead generate. I use a lot of AI to follow up though. My follow-up is almost all AI generated. And here's the really great thing. I will go in and take 10 minutes talking to ChatGPT about a client and their needs and whatever, and say, hey, this person just asked for a home valuation. I've got a listing appointment in Terrell on Saturday that this is the exact scenario. ChatGPT had the entire conversation when I gave them kind of the background, who the lead was when they came in, what their situation was, what I thought the last agent screwed up. And I was like, help me write an email that is designed to get engagement. And then I asked it a couple of times to make it better. What are we missing? Tweaked it. 15 minutes. And is that a little bit excessive for a follow-up? Yes. But my follow-up time is separate from my lead generation time. And once somebody moves into my database, they get a much more serious touch because I've now deemed them somebody that's worth following up with. I wouldn't do that for every expired call every morning at 8 a.m.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I do that after I've had a good conversation with them and now they're engaging with something I need to take it further.
So AI enhancing, not AI replacing, or not technology replacement.
Absolutely.
You're using it all for enhancements. And so, you know, as we wrap this up, if you go back through is you know, if this industry, if you're not willing to, you know, we've lost some people to this. There's a reason I'm bringing this up is that, you know, if you're not willing to call your sphere and database, you got to get out of the business. If you're not willing to call cancels and expireds and do open houses, you need to get out of the business. If you're not willing to go and meet people face to face, if you want to hide behind a computer screen, then you're going to need to get out of the business. Now you start to go down and choose some of these lead gen levers like database and open houses. Great. Database and events with your sphere. If you're part of a country club, whatever it is, great. But you've got to parlay multiple things in there and then have your technology piece enhance it.
Yep.
But it's going to take phone calls. It's going to take face-to-face meetings. And, you know, that's the biggest thing. I was reading an article by, you know, that Bill Gates was talking about on a panel. And in 10 years, how there's a lot of, you know, education and doctors are going to be replaced. But we're still we're really going to covet and really love on the fact that there's people still doing a lot of those things. And there's some kind of, you know, there's two sides of the coin where some people are like, they want to go 100% technology, AI replacement. And then the other side where the enhancement. And several people are betting on it's more enhancement because we still covet that face-to-face. We want to know a human's doing the work, which is why us real estate agents still have the career and the job opportunities that we have. So let's not fumble that ball, and let's not screw it up for everyone else that's about to come into this, or that relies on this to feed their family and to have an income. So if you're watching and listening to this, don't screw it up, please.
And just if you want to take some actionable way, even if all this lead generation talk, like if you have some business expenses, just go evaluate those, right? Like that is one of the things that we didn't talk about. But one of the best ways to kind of clear some of the chatter in your mind and the fear is to go eliminate some of these expenses. If you're like me, there were years that I paid for expired data and didn't dial a single expired number because it sounded like a really great idea. Or I had a dial.
It's like a gym membership, never going.
Or I paid some guy who said he was going to get me Facebook leads or whatever, right? Like I've tried it all, I'm pretty sure. And if you've got some of that stuff going on in your business right now that's keeping you up at night, that you're like, you feel as a guilt that you're not using, get rid of it for a season. Trust me. They will take you back when you want to give them money again. Right. I promise.
Yep. You should make a recruiting video where it's like you're a new agents walking down the dark alley, and every corner they're looking at, you got a guy in a black trench coat. Like, hey,
Facebook. It's actually a pretty genius video idea.
I got a way more offensive one for you. It won't be a dark alley. It'll be the distance between the baggage claim and the bus area at the Cancun airport. Do you remember walking that gauntlet? You ever done that before with all the dudes trying to sell you travel packages and cabs and
drinks?
Hey,
oh my
they're
gosh.
Like, Facebook leads over here.
I ignored everybody else. I did go up that drink guy. I was like, hey,
he's the only guy you want to buy anything from.
Exactly.
You're like, I didn't fly all the way to Cancun without already having my shuttle.
He's the guy offering ready to go leads.
Yes. Ready to go leads. By the way, never
everybody goes to that guy.
It's ready to go leads, never cold call, never get rejected, win 100%. And guess what? Just one closing pays for it.
I'm sure I'm not supposed to do this, but I stood up in front of a bunch of new agents at Champions and I said, if you ever have Champions is our real estate school here. And I said, if you ever have anybody in here who's coming in here promising you ready to go leads and they're going to pay you 50% of the transaction or 50% of the split on them, you dialed me right in the middle of that class and put me on speakerphone. I will debate them in front of you because that does not exist. It doesn't, like, just lay down appointments. We'll just pay you 50-60%. It's no big deal. It's never happening.
If they were ready to go, why would they pay you 50%? I just go myself.
Exactly.
You'd make way
But
more
when you're
money.
hungry, you'll eat whatever, bro.
Oh, 100%.
All right. This was a good episode. Make sure to leave us 5-star review on Spotify. Go over to our Facebook group, the only real estate group worth being a part of. And then you can't cut out this expense, tourstudios.com. You need to be making videos, and make sure that the message matches the market. And so you can get it out there to all your database and future clients. So tourstudios.com. You'll love the way Jesse makes you look and sound, and he guarantees it.
Sure. All kinds of old school like mottos thrown in there.
That's right.
You'll love the way you look.
I guarantee it. So, all right, we'll be back next week. Maybe Brian will be here. Maybe he won't.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Bye.
Hey, thank you for watching. We truly appreciate it. Checking out another episode of the Only Real Estate Podcast worth listening to. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead, hit that share button, hit that like button, and hit the subscribe button. Right? We're dropping more stuff on YouTube constantly. If you're on iTunes, leave us a review, please. We're really, really focused on building up those reviews so we can get more searchable content on there. And if you're on Facebook, like everyone else is, go over and search the only real estate group worth being a part of. You're going to want to go join that group. I'm telling you right now, there's so much gold in there. So go join, share us on YouTube, and leave us that iTunes review, please. Go do it right now. We'll see you on the next show.